What's up, y'all? Welcome to today's edition of SWAC Talk Show. We cover the SWAC inside and out, man. Happy Friday, happy weekend, happy end of the SWAC regular season. SWAC tournament starts next week, so we're gonna go ahead and instead of doing like I've been doing, where I break down the standings, we got one game left for everybody tomorrow. So we're just gonna go through all the scenarios for all the seeds in the tournament. Grambling State regular season champs outright yesterday. Congratulations to them for defeating Alabama A&M in a wild game, 74-73. Big victory for them on the road. They get the season sweep. Season split. So they are the number one seed. So that's in stone. 10, 11, and 12 have already been eliminated. So we still have a bunch of teams fighting for spots, and we're gonna go through everything and see what everybody can end up at. So before we do all of that, I do have my final power rankings on bustingbrackets.com, so you can check that out, or you can find it on my socials. Facebook is Swag Talk, Instagram Swag Talk, Twitter Swag Talk 76. Probably Monday or Tuesday, I will have my SWAC tournament preview on there. Sunday, my SWAC tournament preview will be on here. Since Saturday's last game of the season, we don't have to break down standings or seeding scenarios anymore. We can go ahead and talk about the tournament. So we're gonna preview the tournament here, and I'm gonna have a written article on bustingbrackets.com early next week. So a lot of content coming at you about SWAC basketball. Like the video, share it. Feel free to comment and hit that notification bell to be alerted to any videos I drop, and hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already to subscribe to the channel. So let's go ahead and jump into this, man. We're gonna go ahead and get this out the way. It's a lot. I gave myself a slight headache trying to put all this together, but I do it because I love y'all. So y'all go ahead and pay attention. You don't have to worry about doing this. I did it for you. So let's go ahead and start off with the number 12 spot. That's Mississippi Valley. They close out their regular season on Saturday at Jackson State. Right now, they are 1-16. They'll drop their JSU game and finish off at 1-17 in conference play. Valley had a good opportunity last night against Alcorn to get a victory. Hit a three-pointer to put themselves up, I think, by like 4 or 5 points. Got a technical foul off of that shot. Alcorn finished out the game on a huge run and slammed the door on Valley. So, that was one of them games where, you see the difference between a championship caliber team and a bottom dweller team. That was a chippy game. They had a couple of attacks on Alcorn, but the Braves took advantage of that opportunity. When Valley had a similar scenario in the game, they came out of their possession with 1 point instead of 4. So Alcorn was able to take advantage of the tech, get the points on the possession, and then go on a run and slam the door on Valley. So Delta Devils' miserable season is almost at a conclusion. It'll end on Saturday. Also, number 11, FAMU, they're 4-13. They play Bethune-Cookman on Saturday. I think they dropped that game and finished at 4-14. Odd season, man. I at some point you have to make a change at coaching, on the coaching staff. This team, first year in the SWAC, they were like a 5 or 6 seed, and the last 2 years they've been really bad. And this season they have some talent, but they can't put it together. They don't really play a good style of ball. They just are there, and they are in 11th place. So their season also come to a close against Bethune-Cookman. They'll probably put up a fight in this game, but I think Bethune-Cookman, because they're playing for so much, they'll slam the door on them. Number 10 is Prairie View. Again, another team who had really good chances. They have lost 6 games in a row. At one point they were 5-6 and battling it out for that final spot. Dropped 6 in a row. I think they'll drop 7 in a row to end the season and against Texas Southern and finish in the 10th spot at 5-13. So those are the 3 teams right now that are completely out. Their season is basically over after Saturday. Joining them will be whoever finishes number 9, and right now at number 9 is Bama State. They dropped the game to Southern last night, 65-57. They never led that game, but they cut it down to 1 or 2 points multiple times, including the end of both halves. They cut the game down to 2 points and 1 point. Southern was able to withstand those runs and close the door on them and get the victory. Again, Bama State, they've lost 4 in a row. They're kind of like Prairie View. At one point early in the season, Bama State was like 5-1. Had a big victory over TSU, and then they kind of fell off. I mean, after that, they only won 2 games in conference play over the last month and a half. So they've really cooled off, and I don't understand it because this team does have talent. C.J. Hines and T.J. Madlock is a great backcourt. Isaiah Range is a guy who can score. They have size, but they just haven't put it together consistently, and it really bit them in the butt toward the end of the season. So right now, like I said, they're 7-10. They close out at home against Grambling on Saturday. This is a must-win. They must win it. I don't think they will, but they must win this game because if they lose to Grambling, they are automatically 9th seed, basically barring anything crazy happening. So if they lose, they're out because they'll be 7-11, and the other 2 teams who they're battling out with can't finish no worse than 8-10. So a loss by Bama State drops them out the race and keeps them out of the tournament. But if you want to look at it from a different perspective, they can finish as high as 7. But first off, they have to beat Grambling. So any scenario that I talk about with Bama State, they must win Saturday's game against Grambling. So if they beat Grambling, Alabama A&M loses their game to Southern, and Pine Bluff loses their game to Alcorn, then they can get the 7th seed. They'll be 8-10, and those 2 teams also be 8-10, and they'll win tiebreakers in those scenarios because they have a tiebreaker over Bama A&M because they beat them with a plus 12 point differential, and then they have a plus 3 point differential over Pine Bluff. They have a 2-2 record against those 3 other 2 teams, same as Alabama A&M. So Pine Bluff is 1-3 in that matchup against those 2 teams. So that would drop them out of their first tiebreaker, and then Bama State would win the Alabama A&M tiebreaker. So that's how they can finish 7 if they go 8-10 and the other 2 teams go 8-10. If they beat Grambling and Alabama A&M wins their game against Southern, and Pine Bluff loses their game to Alcorn, then the Hornets would get the 8th seed because A&M will be 9-9 with that victory, and Pine Bluff would be 8-10 along with Bama State at 8-10, and Bama State holds that tiebreaker. They could also get an 8th seed if they were to beat Grambling and Alabama A&M lost to Southern, and Pine Bluff won their game. Again, they have a plus 3 point differential over the Golden Lions, so that would give them the 8th seed. If they win and the other 2 teams win, then they get the 9th seed because they would be 8-10 and the other 2 teams would be 9-9. So their opportunity to make the tournament is really slim. They only have three scenarios that can get them in, and they all depend on them beating Grambling. With Grambling winning the championship regular season already, that makes it a little interesting how they're going to approach this game on Saturday. Do you rest guys, or do you go out and play a normal game and see where you at by like halftime, and then get yourself ready for the tournament. That's one way to look at it. Not really sure how Grambling's going to approach it, but Bama State needs to win this game. There's no other option. If they don't win this game, then they can forget it. Right now, they need this game in the worst way. So I think they finished 9 because I don't think they're going to beat Grambling either way that it goes. So right now, Pine Bluff is our 8th team right now in the standings. They can finish as high as 7. That's provided that they beat Alcorn and Alabama A&M loses. If they beat Alcorn, Alabama A&M loses, then Pine Bluff would be 9-9, and Bama A&M would be 8-10, and then they would have to determine their fate based on what Bama State did against Grambling. Otherwise, Pine Bluff will get the 8th seed if they beat Alcorn, and Alabama A&M wins their game. Golden Lions will lose the tiebreaker. They got swept by Alabama A&M, so they would lose their tiebreaker and get the 8th seed. If they lose to Alcorn, Alabama A&M loses to Alcorn, and Grambling beats Bama State, then the Golden Lions would get that 8th seed again. Tiebreakers and everything. Bama State would be 7-11, so they would be out. Those two teams would be tied at 8-10, and A&M would win the tiebreaker. Now, there are two scenarios for Pine Bluff to miss the tournament. They both come with a loss on Saturday. So if they lose to Alcorn, Bama State wins against Grambling, and Alabama A&M wins against Southern, then Pine Bluff would be out at the 9 seed. If Alabama A&M and Pine Bluff both lose on Saturday and Bama State wins on Saturday, Pine Bluff again will be the odd team out and finish at the 9th seed. But I pretty much see them finishing at the 8th seed. Like I said, I think they're going to drop this game to Alcorn and finish at 8-10. Kind of a disappointing season for a team who I think is very, very good offensively. Martin, Milton, Williams, Joe French, all these guys. Joe French had like 28 points last night. All these guys can score the basketball. Plett is a solid guy inside. They just aren't a team that can get a ton of stops, and that really hurts you in tournament settings, and it hurts you at the end of this game. They fell behind big against Jackson State last night and made a run and cut it down to 3 at the end, but couldn't get that last shot that they needed to tie the game up. So they need to beat a very hot Alcorn team. Alcorn's won 8 games in a row, so they're gonna be going into Alcorn against a team who is playing on fire and playing for a top two seed. So it's not going to be easy, but Pine Bluff does have the ability to score the basketball. And if they knock down their shots, they are the leading 3-point shooting team in the conference. I think they make like 9 threes a game or so. So they're a team, if they can hit those shots, they're going to be a factor, but they just, again, aren't consistent. And that's why they're sitting at 8-9 and probably finish at 8-10 at the 8th spot. Number 7 right now is Alabama A&M. They can finish at 9-9 because I do think they have a good chance to beat Southern in this game, but Southern is playing pretty decently right now. I think Southern may have kind of found their footing again off of that 3-game slump. So I think Southern has a really good chance of winning this game. But the Bulldogs can hang with them. They probably can beat them. They gave Grambling all they wanted last night, and they beat Grambling once already. So they've shown that they can play with and beat teams that are higher than them, but they've also shown that they can lose to teams that are below them or even with them. So you never know what you're going to get with this team, but right now they're 8-9, and I do think they'll finish at that 7th spot because I think Southern will find a way to pull out their victory in a close one. But Bama State, they are pretty much locked into that 7th spot. They have 3 scenarios where they can finish 7th. First is if they beat Southern, they finish 7th no matter. If they win, they finish 7th no matter what. So if they beat Southern and Pine Bluff wins, they finish 7th because of the tiebreaker. If they lose to Southern, Pine Bluff loses, and Bama State loses, they finish 7th again because of tiebreaker over Pine Bluff. If they beat Southern and Pine Bluff loses to Alcorn, they finish 7th. So a win against Southern, everybody losing, 7, 8, 9 losing, the Bulldogs get the 7th seed. If they lose to Southern, Pine Bluff beats Alcorn, and Bama State loses, then the Bulldogs get the 8th seed. If they lose to Southern, Bama State lose, if they lose to Southern, Pine Bluff loses, and Bama State wins, Bulldogs get the 8th seed because they would lose the tiebreaker to Bama State and win the tiebreaker over Pine Bluff, so they would get that 8th spot. They do have one scenario where they do miss the tournament, and that's if they lose to Southern, Pine Bluff beats Alcorn, and Bama State beats Grambling. They would be the odd team out. So because they would lose the tiebreaker to Bama State, and Pine Bluff would be 9-9 in that situation. So really, I think the Bulldogs are, I don't want to say they locked into the 7th spot, but they are probably going to be a 7th seed. They find themselves in a pretty decent spot making the tournament. The odds of them missing the tournament are very slim, even with the record that they have. So out of the 3 teams, they're the most comfortably in. There's not a lot of there's only one scenario of them not making it, so they're comfortably in. Odds is they'll be the 7th seed, but it's a possibility they finish 8th, but they are in for the most part. That takes us to number 6, and this is where things start to get a little bit more dicey, because the movement between some of these teams from 6 to 2 can vary. But right now, Jackson State is the number 6 team. They're 10-7. They close out at home against Valley. I'm, there's nothing 100% certain, but I'm pretty certain they'll win this game and finish at 11-7. They can finish as high as 5. Their movement is very, very limited. They are either going to be a 5 seed or a 6 seed. They can finish at 5 if they beat Valley. TSU beats Prairie View, and Bethune-Cookman loses to FAMU. They would finish at 11-7, and they would lose the tiebreaker to TSU. If they beat Valley, Bethune-Cookman loses to FAMU, and TSU loses to FAMU. They again would finish in the 5th seed. They would finish in the 5th spot again due to tiebreakers. They have multiple scenarios of finishing 6th place, and they have 5 of those. So they're pretty much your 6th seed. They beat Valley, and TSU beats Prairie View, and Bethune-Cookman beats FAMU. They finished tied with Bethune-Cookman at 11-7, and they lose their tiebreaker, so they will finish in the 6th spot. They beat Valley. Bethune-Cookman beats FAMU, and TSU loses to Prairie View. All 3 teams would be 11-7. They would lose the tiebreaker because they would lose their 3-team tiebreaker because they went 2-2 against Bethune-Cookman and TSU. Bethune-Cookman went 2-1 in those 2 games, and against those 2 teams, and TSU they went 1-2 in that situation. So they would get the tiebreaker there and finish in the 6th seed. If they beat Valley, Bethune-Cookman beats FAMU, TSU loses. I think I put that one twice. Don't worry about that one. See, that was saying so crazy. If they lose the Valley, Bethune-Cookman wins, they would finish in the 6th spot. If they lose the Valley and Bethune-Cookman loses, they will still finish in the 6th spot because they lose the tiebreaker to Bethune-Cookman. So they're pretty much solidly the 6th seed. There's not a lot of movement for JSU. They can't move higher than 5 because they have 7 losses already. And with tiebreakers, even if TSU was to lose and finish at 11-7, they can't jump them because they don't have a tiebreaker over TSU or Bethune-Cookman. So their movement is very limited. They're probably going to be in the 6th spot. Number 5 right now is Bethune-Cookman. I do think they beat FAMU on Saturday and finish at 11-7. They'll probably be the 5 seed. Now they can move up to 4 in a couple scenarios, or they can finish as low as 6 in one scenario. But if they beat FAMU, TSU loses, and JSU loses, they get the 4 seed. If they beat FAMU, TSU loses and JSU wins, they get the 4 seed again. 5 seed, if they beat FAMU, TSU wins and JSU wins. They finish tied with JSU. They have a plus 10 point differential over JSU, so they win that tiebreaker. If they beat FAMU, TSU wins and JSU loses. Again, they get the 5 seed because they will be 11-7. JSU would be 10-8. TSU would be 12-6. So they would get the 5 seed there. And if they lose to FAMU and JSU loses to Valley, both teams will be 10-8. And like I said, Bethune-Cookman has a tiebreaker over Jackson State, so they will get the 5 seed regardless. And if they lose to FAMU and JSU beats Valley, they will drop to the 6th seed because they will be 10-8. And JSU would be 11-7. So not a lot of movement for them. They can only move up 1 spot, and there's only one scenario that they can drop 1 spot. So they're probably going to be your 5 seed, and that's a dangerous 5 seed. They have some success against some of the teams ahead of them. They won the season series over Texas Southern, 1-0. They swept Southern. They did lose the season series to Bethune-Cookman, to Alcorn and Grambling, but they'll most likely play Grambling in the 2nd round if they get past their 1st round matchup. So the opportunity for them to make a run is there. They're just going to have to be able to beat somebody that they haven't beaten in the second round, most likely. So that takes us to our number 4 spot. And this is where you start to see a lot more movement possible. TSU, they can go as high as 3, but not higher than they can go as high as 3 or as low as 5. I want to say there's a possibility for them to finish in the 2 spot, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. So I'm gonna leave it alone. If they beat Prairie View, Alcorn wins and Southern loses, then they would finish tied with Southern, and they would win that tiebreaker, so they would get the 3 seed. If they beat Prairie View, Alcorn loses and Southern wins, again they would win that tiebreaker over those teams. If there's a 3-way tie, because Southern loses, Alcorn loses, and Prairie View and TSU beats Prairie View, they would still get the 3 seed because they would lose the tie. They would lose the first tiebreaker because they went 2-2 against Southern and Alcorn. Alcorn went 1-2 against those 2 teams, and Southern went 2-1 against those 2 teams. So Southern would win their tiebreaker and get the number 2 spot. TSU would get the 3 spot, and Alcorn would get 4 in that scenario. Texas Southern could get a 4 seed if they beat Prairie View and Southern wins and Alcorn wins, and there's a that would put them at 12-6, and the other 2 teams would be 13-5. If they lose to Prairie View, and Bethune-Cookman loses to FAMU and Jackson State beats Valley, they would get the 4 seed due to the tiebreakers. And then if they lose to Prairie View, beat Bethune-Cookman, they lose to Prairie View, Bethune-Cookman loses to FAMU, and JSU loses to Valley. Again, they would get the 4 seed. If they lose to Prairie View, Bethune-Cookman beats FAMU, JSU beats Valley, they would get the 5 seed there. And again, they would get the 5 seed. If they lose to Prairie View, Bethune-Cookman wins their game and JSU loses their game. So the odds of them finishing 5 are probably slimmer than anything. They can finish 3 if Southern or Alcorn loses and they end up in a tie with one of those 2 teams and they beat Prairie View. Most likely they're going to finish 4th, and that's a dangerous spot for TSU. They can beat Bethune-Cookman if that's where they finish, and they've beaten Grambling already, so they do have an avenue to make the championship if that's the way the tournament falls. If they finish 3rd, they can beat whoever finishes 2nd, and they are in a good spot in this March, and it's a tournament, so you never count TSU out no matter where they finish. Last year they won it as an 8 seed, so they can win it as a 4 seed or 5 seed. But right now, I think they will get in as the 4 seed. Those are probably the most consistent scenarios that they have. Taking us to the 3 seed right now, Alcorn. They're 12-5. They close out at home against Pine Bluff. Braves have won 8 games in a row. Those big bad Braves, they've won 8 games in a row. I think they beat Pine Bluff and finished at 13-5. Now there's not a lot of movement for them. They have one scenario that they can finish 2nd, and they have one scenario where they can finish 4th. Their scenarios are basically 3rd place. If they beat Pine Bluff and Southern loses, then they get the 2 seed. If they beat Pine Bluff and Southern wins, they get the 3 seed because they lost the tiebreaker to Southern. They only played once, and Southern won that game. If they lose to Pine Bluff and Southern wins and TSU loses, they get the 3 seed. If they lose this, if all 3 teams lose, then they get the 3 seed again. If there's a 3-way tie at 12-6, that means Southern loses, they lose, and TSU wins. They will get the 4 seed because they lose all the tiebreakers. They will lose the first tiebreaker, which is the combined record between those teams that's tied in a 3-team or more tie. They would lose that because they went 1-2 against Southern and Texas Southern. And then they would lose the tiebreaker to TSU because they have a -9 point differential. So they don't have any tiebreakers against the teams that they're battling out for that spot. So if they want to finish 2nd, they need to win and hope Southern loses. Any ties that the Braves finish in, they're going to finish in a lower spot. But right now, I think they're probably going to be the 3 seed. That's where most of their scenarios are at the 3 spot. Number 2 is Southern. They're probably the closest team to being locked in the 2nd. If they beat Alabama A&M on Saturday, they're second no matter what happens behind them. Because if they beat Alabama A&M and Alcorn wins, they both teams be tied at 13-5. They win that tiebreaker. If they finish, if they win against Alabama A&M and Alcorn loses, they win it anyway because they're 13-5. Alcorn will be 12-6. TSU can only finish as high as 12-6. So Southern, they will win it there. And if there was a three-way tie at 12-6, where they lost to Alabama A&M, Alcorn lost to Pine Bluff, and TSU beat Prairie View, they would still get that 2 seed because, again, like I said, they have a 2-1 record combined against those two teams, so that would give them that tiebreaker, and then the other two teams would go from there. They could finish third if they lose to Alabama A&M and Alcorn wins and TSU loses. If Alcorn wins, TSU wins, and Southern loses, they would finish in the 4th spot because they don't have a tiebreaker over TSU. They have a minus 5-point differential. So Southern is sitting probably in the best spot out of the 3 teams. As long as they win, they are in. If they lose, they're gonna need everybody else to lose to get their 2nd spot. If they lose, then they need TSU to lose to keep that 3 spot. So the odds of them being able to get that 2 seed are pretty high. They, like I said, they can finish 3rd or 4th, but a win over Alabama A&M seal the deal for them. I do think they can win this game. A&M is tough. They match up pretty well with Southern, especially because they have the size to kind of get physical with Southern. But if Southern plays like they did last night, knocking down those shots like they did, I think they have a good chance of winning this game. So that leaves them at the 2 spot. And Grambling is the regular season champ, so they have the 1 spot all locked up. No matter what happens on Saturday, they get the 1 seed. So looking at where the tournament would go right now, Grambling 1 seed, Southern 2 seed, Alcorn 3, TSU 4, Bethune-Cookman 5, Jackson State 6, Alabama A&M 7, and Pine Bluff 8. That will give us 1st round matchups of Grambling against Pine Bluff. Pine Bluff beat Grambling in their only matchup this season, so keep that in mind. Southern and Alabama A&M, they would play, and that would be a game where they play on Saturday and then turn around and play at the beginning of the tournament, just like last season. So, that's a familiar opponent that you just played a couple days ago. If you beat them, then you got to try to turn around and beat them again in a short period of time. If you lose to them, you got to turn around and try to beat them in a short period of time. So that's a difficult situation to play that team. Alcorn and Jackson State, they split their season series. Alcorn ended up winning by more against Jackson State. They have I think they have a positive point differential over Jackson State, so they would get that. I think that they have shown that they can beat this team, and they have shown that they can lose to this team. JSU is a tough opponent. They can go on a run and win it even at a 6 seed. So that's no easy draw for Alcorn. And then Bethune-Cookman and TSU would be our other 1st round matchup, and Bethune-Cookman won their only matchup of the season. So there's a lot of good matchups in the 1st round. And just looking ahead, 2nd round, you could get Grambling and TSU, or Grambling and Bethune-Cookman, or even Pine Bluff and TSU, or Pine Bluff and Bethune-Cookman, because I'm not saying that Grambling is going to lose that game, but but Pine Bluff could beat them. They beat them once, so it's not impossible. 2nd round, you get Southern and Alcorn in a rematch, 1-point game the first time they played. Southern and Jackson again. That was a game where Southern had a lead and JSU made a furious comeback. Or you could get Alabama A&M and Alcorn. Braves Braves won that series 1-0. Or you can get Jackson State and Alabama A&M and a low seed matchup in the 2nd round. So there's a lot of intrigue in all these games. I mean, even all the way to the championship. There's going to be – I think this is going to probably be a really good tournament because I really do think that everybody that gets in has a chance to make a run in this. Now, how far they go is going to depend on how these teams have played all season. It's hard to turn it on and win 3 in a row when you haven't really won a lot of games. But when you have a team like Pine Bluff who can score, who can shoot, the opportunity for them to get hot is there. If they can knock down shots and pick up a win early, they can probably go on a run, or they can be like they have been in some games and go ice cold and get eliminated early. A team like Southern, who has free throw problems, they can, they went 10 out of 12 yesterday, but typically Southern shoots like 68% from the line. So if they were to have one of their typical games, like 45% against FAMU, which they won that game, but if they were to have a bad free throw shooting game, they can go home in the first round. Grambling has gotten beat by teams that are low in the standings. So again, there's a possibility. Alcorn, before they went on their streak, they dropped a couple games that they probably shouldn't have. JSU battled injury and inconsistency. Bethune-Cookman, same thing with them not playing up to the level all season. TSU is the only team that I look at like it's March. I just can't count them out. But at some point, that magic is gonna fade. So it's always possible. So I really think that if the 8 teams who I have as the eight seeds get in, I think all of them can make a run. If Bama State gets in, it starts to get a little bit dicey because they have no consistency. So that's gonna do it for our show today. Like I said, Sunday we'll be back with our SWAC tournament preview, and then we'll cover the tournament pretty much every day, all the way through the end. So with that being said, man, I'm your tour guide around the SWAC Seawell signing out, and I'm gonna catch y'all on the rebound. Peace.